Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another edition of the Vitalogy Podcast. Ryan, hello there.
Josh, hi. It is good to be back.
It is, man. It is. It's been a while since we've been together.
It has been.
We missed a week. I know there was tears and gnashing of teeth.
Yes, there were.
When we missed.
Nasty emails, all sorts of things like that.
The crowds, they spoke and they said, we want more.
I saw that you had Savon and Lundy on. That was awesome. Very really cool.
Fun. I know. It was kind of neat. We had 3 people in here twice in a row.
Yeah,
right? We
I know.
Dennis here, and then the two of them were a blast.
That's great.
That was really fun. It was great getting to talk to them some and hear some of their stories, and it was really fun talking about the same passage and how you could take it 2 very different ways.
Yeah,
which they did.
Which was fun. Yes, and they both did a great job.
Great sermons.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's fun to see the way that I think I told you this. Like, I think it'd be fun to do a sermon series where we preach the same passage in different ways, like a few weeks in a row.
Yes,
like that was sort of like a little. We dipped our toes in the water there, you know.
Exactly.
So
that made for a fun little discussion there.
Yeah.
And so, here we are. We're back. We're back. You're back in.
I'm back. I was not. I had to tune in later because I was on a beach in Mexico.
Yes, you were.
So, my wife and I got away, and so it was really, really good.
It's
really good.
I'm very glad I didn't see you in the comments.
I would not have been in the comments.
It would have been a bad example to all of us. I think. we might have all had words for him and said,
right. Yes.
Stop working.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yep.
Well, good. Well, we are so glad that you're back, and
it's good to be back.
And we're ready to dive in.
Yeah.
But I want to begin today a little bit differently. We will dive into, as the title to this said, I think I called it William Hung, the Emperor with No Clothes, and Being Honest with Yourself. Right. So we're going to talk about all those things. I think, to a certain extent.
I can't wait.
And we'll see how much time William Hung gets on this conversation. But
you got it. Yeah.
But I want to begin with a segment that is often at the end that is about a book.
Okay.
Because today I brought a book.
All right.
And I'm hoping this book is
okay. We haven't talked about this at all.
We have not at all. This is Brendan. I gotta go way underneath the table here because I hid
Was
it.
this hidden from me? All right.
This was hidden from you because this is called the Vitalogy Podcast, right?
Yes.
Okay, I want to show you what I got.
Oh, no way.
I actually found this. I'm holding up a 1930 edition of a book called Vitalogy. In fact, and so
that's the same. Isn't that the same branding that Pearl Jam used for their Vitalogy cover? So black, that type of lettering.
Yes. So this actually came out of a question I got. I got a question the other day, a number of weeks back. They said, Josh, what is this Vitalogy thing? Explain this to me. And this is someone in our congregation. They said, I looked it up and they said it was it had something to do with Pearl Jam. And Josh, why are you using this term, Vitalogy? Like what is going on here? And I thought to myself, that's probably a good question.
Fair enough.
And probably something we need to address every so often, which we do sometimes. We do every now and again. And so this word Vitalogy has been linked with Pearl Jam.
It has.
And this is the book that linked that. So here, you can take a look at this because you could go online and Google Vitalogy and you will see an album cover that looks exactly like that. They absolutely
did you buy this?
Ripped this off. I did, yes.
That's awesome.
I did. And so they loved this album cover and decided, this cover. Oh my goodness. That's actually, I hadn't seen all this. Wow. They love this idea. Vitalogy as a word, it's a Latin combination of words, which, I at one point I called it a made up word, but then I realized at some point all words are made up.
Yeah.
Right?
Compound word, right? But
they're
those two together.
You're putting together words and somehow, words become popular and used more. And so vitalogy, it means the study of life. And in my theory is that the word biology kind of won out in the I don't know, the grand evolution of words, whatever.
Right.
But because this is basically a biology book.
It is.
You just saw. Oh yeah, there's some more graphic, not very graphic.
Oh, I'm glad I didn't turn to some of those.
Yeah, there is some there. They have body parts.
Oh yeah, they do. Sure enough.
That is actually quite appropriate.
So it turns out Vitalogy's rated PG-13 at least.
At least. Yeah. So, but Pearl Jam liked this so much that they just copied it.
They copied it. I
don't think there's anything different about it, which is funny to me because that's really cool. Like, that's a really cool graphic.
It is.
I mean, that what do they call that with fonts? That there's a typology.
It is a typology, man, no doubt.
And so here's I think Ryan's going to pull up right now for you, which if you're at home listening to this on the podcast only, the audio only version, then you're going to have to take our word for it. That I am holding a very large book. This book has,
it's like a family Bible size.
1,000 pages, just about 1,000 pages, and yes, family Bible size, full on hardcover that has Vitalogy.
Right on, man.
I figured we need this.
Okay, now if you want Josh to read that and do a review next week, then I feel like just give him the thumbs up, and he'll dedicate the next few days to reading that.
You know, I feel like this one
should be right there.
No, it's messed up the focus. I'll have to figure out a placement for it or something.
Yeah,
but,
I like that.
But this is partially just to say that no, we're not just copying Pearl Jam. We're sort of copying Pearl Jam, copying this book. And
that's awesome.
And I think we're kind of reclaiming a word, right?
I like that.
This word, because if we called this biology, everyone would get the wrong idea, and neither of us would be qualified to talk about biology.
It'd be triggering for some people.
It would be, actually. It really would be. We wouldn't be qualified to do it, but instead of bios, the biology, the study of our bodies or organisms or things like that, our life. In that sense, we really want to study the life that Jesus came to give us. Right. And so we call this vital signs for life abundant. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the etymology of this idea of Vitalogy. And now I have hard evidence for it.
Yes, you do. Hardback evidence.
Hardback evidence.
Yep.
A very old hardback evidence. So anyway,
very cool. I like that.
Hard to find.
All right.
Hard to find. So thought you'd enjoy that.
I do. That's awesome. How funny.
All right. Well, so I thought I'd show him that live here with you. So so that we can, but now we can dive into how this passage points us to that life. Really. Right. That's what we're doing. And
week in, week out. That's sort of our goal.
That is our goal. Yeah. I know it's your goal in the sermon as well.
Absolutely.
Is to point people to life there.
Yep.
And so,
no doubt.
So here we get to break it down a little bit more and dive in a little deeper.
Yeah.
Especially diving into an American Idol reference that began the sermon, right?
It did. I thought about showing the video, and then I was like, I'd probably just derail everything. So
that would be, I don't know if my kids have seen that video.
It'd probably be worth showing them.
That was
sort of
2. When was that?
I think it was season 3, 2014, and it was the second most popular show in America at the time.
2004 is what you wrote in.
Oh, so yeah, 2004. The notes are right. Yeah, 2004.
None of my kids would have been alive.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's a long time ago.
It's quite a while.
A long time ago. Man, yeah, William Hung dominated that season. I mean, he lost, but he won. Yeah. So the story behind William Hung, right, is he auditions, and it's a horrific audition, but like so bad that it became good type of bad. And he actually did quit going. He was studying engineering
somewhere really
I thought like Cal Berkeley or something like that. Yeah, like
really good school.
Like, William is smart, right?
Smart man. Yeah.
And so he stopped going to school, stopped pursuing his engineering career, and then he actually did have a music career.
Yes, he did. Oh, yes, he did. Now, Is it music career or was it comedy career?
Yeah.
Yes.
And whatever it was, I believe he performed at Escondido.
Oh my!
I think he came to the mall in Escondido.
Oh my goodness!
So I'm not sure if any of our listeners can either confirm or deny that fact, but
I'm sure that was before either of our time in Escondido.
Yeah.
But man,
but William Hung at the mall in Escondido.
Okay, if you were there and saw William Hung live,
if you can imagine anything better than that,
oh my goodness,
then good luck. Good luck with that.
I was there when.
Yeah, I was there when.
Man,
but yeah, so I use that as like an introduction to this idea of self-deception, or maybe even like blind spots, right? That there's things that we believe about ourselves that just aren't true.
Yeah.
And when we find them out, sometimes it can be painful. And when you find them out on national television or in front of a whole audience, it can be extremely painful.
Yeah.
When I found out that I didn't know that Detroit was in Michigan, it was it was painful.
That's right. That was in a sermon.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So I wanted to try, and one of my goals in talking about, when I talk about really like challenging subjects like that, my hope is to have something that's a little bit comical and lighthearted to try to introduce the concept to people, right? Because you want to build a bridge to, hey, there's a little bit of William Hung in every single one of us.
Oh, yes.
You know,
yes.
And that's the goal in telling that story, is to get people thinking, well, maybe there is.
Yeah.
Maybe there is.
Absolutely.
So I followed that up with a more well-known, at least among some of our congregation, short story by Hans Christian Andersen about the emperor, his new clothes, and the con men seamstresses that are hired, and the way that they tell him they're making clothes that he just simply can't see. He buys it hook, line, sinker, and walks out in front of everybody, believing he's wearing clothes, but he is as naked as the day he was born. So then my favorite part about that story is the kids who yell out, or the kid who yells out, "You're naked." So if you've worked with kids much, you know that they have a propensity to speak the truth.
They can. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway.
So, okay. As I'm listening to this, I'm just trying to think to myself, you said this comment that we all have a little William Hung in us, and that's or we're all in a sense emperors with no clothes on. And I'm just trying to think, what is that? And the problem is that we don't know those things often.
Yeah.
And that's why they're blind spots.
Yeah. And that's why they're
blinded to them.
Yep.
Yeah. That's hard. That's really good. But so, now we're kind of getting the title of this podcast, because you talked a lot about being honest.
Yeah.
Being honest with ourselves. Right. But before we get to that, because you take us a little bit through this message, to how you got there.
Yeah. So, well, one, we're in a season of our study of 1 Corinthians where we're really focusing on growth, and it springs out of 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 1, where Paul says to the church at Corinth, I wish you were further along by now. And I wish you were more like adults, but you're adult infants, really. You're still drinking milk when you should be on solid foods. And he's talking about their spiritual maturity. And so the way that we've sort of chosen to teach this portion of the letter is through that lens. And that I'm trying to trace some of the ways that we get stuck in our growth. And one of those ways we talked about the week before, which we did a message that we just simply entitled "Failure to Launch," right?
Yeah.
And in that message, we made the point that growth gets stunted when God gets sidelined, right? So when God gets edged out, our growth starts to stop, and we can see the way that happens because we get jealous, or we strive for notoriety, or we long for control, or we just focus on the temporal rather than the eternal. But I think Paul's really continuing that line of thought when he starts to talk to the Corinthian church about in chapter 3, verse 18, where he said, "Let none of you deceive himself." And so I'm sort of pulling that thread all throughout this message, but it's connected to, I'm really disappointed that you've stopped growing.
Yeah.
And that self-deception is one of the ways that we cap our growth out. It's hard for us to grow beyond being honest, because the longer we lie to ourselves, we just perpetuate that, whatever that falsity is that we're believing. And it takes honesty to move towards healing and growth.
There's, I've heard it been said this way, that there's no growth outside of the truth, right?
Yeah.
That the only way to growth is realizing the truth. And oftentimes that's painful truth at times, or hard truth.
Yeah. Well, and I think we often objectify truth, right? And it deserves that, right? There is an objective, absolute truth that's universally true, whether we believe it or not. And I think Christians often focus on that and want to defend that and go after that, which is fine. But that's not what Paul's interested in here. Here, he's interested in us believing and seeing the truth about ourselves. And so not in a meta sort of objective sense, but in more of an internal reflective, am I, like, asking the question, is what I believe about me true?
And not in competition with objective truth necessarily.
No, definitely not
one or the other, which I think that's the narrative that I think a lot of those Christians have been shown, because some people will try to hold up subjective truth over objective truth, right? Now, but I do think, and I think what you're saying is that Paul is saying, no, you've got to look at the subjective nature of how this is affecting us individually, even though there is a real objective truth. That's really
absolutely,
that's good.
And so I sort of had this line that I played with the whole sermon, which is self-deception is self-protection. Because I really wanted to get underneath, why in the world would anybody want to deceive themselves? And to try to push back on that, even though we all do it, we all operate in self-deception on some level. My question was, why? Why is that part of our story? And I think, I mean, you can go back to the garden to see the way that this was happening. And even though some of the tactics that Adam and Eve use to deflect when God comes to them are self-deceptive tactics, right? Which we talk about a little bit later on in the message. But my whole premise was the life we crave is on the other side of the honesty we fear. And I really wanted to encourage people to address the areas of self-deception that may be real in our life, and then to trust Jesus as he would move us forward.
Yeah. I love that, because that honesty that we fear, it's at the same time we almost, we don't, it's a blind, if it is a blind spot, it's not always that we fear it, but we just don't even know it's there. But we also don't want to deal with it, right? We don't want to, I mean, sometimes we have our own self-imposed blind spots, right? That are because of fear. I just don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about my weaknesses. I don't want to think about the problems in my life, in my marriage, in my job, in my whatever that is, right? That's and yet what you're saying is that's where the growth happens.
As painful as it is, it turns out growth hurts. I mean,
turns out that's good.
I think, and that's that. When we really address what we saw 2 weeks ago, also, I think that's just, man, at least that's been the case in my life. It's been facing these realities about myself and then going, okay, where does that come from? And what do I want to do about it? And Jesus, what are you inviting me to do in partnership with your Spirit?
What a great, that I just think about, it leads me to think about my kids growing, right? I've got a 15-year-old who at times growth hurts. Right? Even just
physically.
Like they have like odd knee problems all of a sudden because they're growing too fast and their body's not keeping up, or they, sorry kid, but or there's like all of a sudden they're breaking out and everything like that, and growth just kind of hurts. They go through those awkward, weird times that no one wants to go back to. It does. That's interesting. That's true, and that's very true in life.
And
growing
I think
older hurts.
It is, and it's true spiritually too. And so I think that's why that's why I think Paul has to really press on this. And it's exactly where he goes in the rest of this passage. Now, here's what I'll say about this text. I think, well, this was a challenging one to teach because it was a big chunk of scripture, and to try to find a way that there's a thread to pull throughout the whole thing was honestly a little bit of a challenge. And I think this passage affords itself the ability to be taught in a few different ways, right? So if we were doing like a pastor's conference and talking to pastors, it would have looked a little and felt a little bit different. If I was just teaching through it, it probably would have felt a little bit different. Because there were some things that I drew out of the passage that and some things that I didn't draw out that I could have, right? And so if we want, we can push into some of those, but I would just say that this was, I loved the way that this sort of came together with the self-deception idea, but there was a lot of sort of choose your own adventure in regards to the way that you'd focus on certain things. In light of the letter as a whole.
That's a good way to put it. Cause sometimes that, I don't know if this was like that doesn't come to you till, or that final way that it all comes together. It comes after hours and hours of study. Maybe it's after a day or two. Even, to realize, that's a way to put it all together.
And that's the idea of like rolling an exegetical outline. What does this text say into a homiletical outline of how do we want to preach this in light of what God might be saying through the exegesis and the truth of what's said? What does he want to say to our church and our community at this point in time, right? And so there's a difference between an exegetical outline and a homiletical outline, right?
Yeah. Well, what a great observation, even that you knowing who you're speaking to matters in what you would say from this text. Right?
Totally. So let me give you an example. I addressed this passage later on, but in an incipient form, and I didn't develop the idea at all. For all things are yours, Paul says, verse 21 of chapter 3, right? Whether Paul or Apollos, Cephas, or Cephas, and then so just stop there. Like one of the things Paul's saying is you don't have to choose between Paul and Apollos and Cephas. Like they can all be instructors and teachers. You can learn from all of them. Like why are you choosing sides? They're all yours. But then he goes on to say, so all things are yours, or the world, or life, or death, or the present, or the future, all are yours, and you are Christ's, and Christ is God's. And all are yours. That is a cosmic statement.
Oh my goodness, yes.
It reminds
Present,
me of
future, life, death. I mean,
there's nothing he leaves out, right?
Totally.
It reminds me of the Romans chapter 8. Nothing can separate you from the love of God, not life nor death, present, future. It reminds me of Colossians chapter 1, where Paul says that through his blood he has reconciled all things to himself, making peace on the cross. And so there's this cosmic dimension to our faith that I don't know that we often go into because it's mind altering. It seems to us to be this very otherworldly type of journey, and yet Paul doesn't have any problem going there.
No.
And I think that ties into this idea of life, death, present, future, ties into the fact that he goes, I don't even judge myself. And Christ will judge me in the end. And so he definitely has in his mind this sort of like eschatological or last things view of not only his reality as a Christian, but God's judgment of him as a person.
Oh man, there's so much there's so many ways to just tease that out. That would be a great sermon. I mean, so much there. Because even that idea, I love how you tied that with the, Paul or Apollos, because it's as if Paul is just minimizing those things so much. Like you're holding on to this little piece when it's all life, death. I mean, all of it is yours.
Right.
There's so much more is what he's getting at.
Yep.
Like, that's great. But man, you're missing out.
Well, and then
much.
So then down in verse, I don't have it right in front of me. Is it verse 8 where he says, oh no, verse 7, where he says, what do you have that you did not receive? And if you received it, why do you boast as if you did not receive it? So I think one of the things he wants to make the point about is don't lose sight of the fact that all things are yours, but they're not yours because you've performed, and they're not yours because you've earned. They're yours because of grace. Don't lose sight of that. And when you start to play these games of divisions and who do we like better as a pastor, teacher, or preacher, or whatever was going on in Ephesus at the time, you're losing sight of this eschatological reality that you're in Christ and it's all yours in the end. So those were things I didn't even talk about. That was I think that was my original point, right? Like,
yes, totally.
We didn't even talk about those in the sermon, and yet they're all there and massive in their implication.
This is why this could be a 2-year study.
Easily. Easily.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was sort of a fun, there's a lot of rabbit trails there in the prep and study, but in the end, I think from a preaching standpoint, I'm grateful for where sort of the Lord led.
Yeah. Now, because that idea though, because you did bring up that idea of earning versus receiving, right? That we think that we've earned it when really we've received it.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a great concept for us to realize that because we like earning.
Absolutely.
We really, we live in a world of earning.
Yeah.
Right. And part of this recognition that this has been a gift given to us, and the gift is even so much more than we realize.
Yeah. And I think the subtext of why do you think you've earned what you've actually received is like, so the present, did you earn that? No. Yeah. The future, did you earn that? No. That's all gift. Your life, did you earn that? No. Death, well, maybe you could argue we've earned that because of sin, but you know what I mean? Like that, I think that's the subtext to Paul going, it's all yours. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. All right.
Anyway, so this idea of self-deception and how do we do that? I suggested that this idea of the wisdom of the age is tied to their both longing and the reality that they were more accepted in their cultural moment than maybe Paul suggested they should be. And so like they had convinced themselves that they were okay and they were right because they were in line with the wisdom of the age, right?
Okay.
So they sort of taken Christianity and added the sophist to it. And when we have our own version of this, and they went, we must be doing okay.
Okay. Yeah. So it validated what they had already believed.
Yeah.
What do they call that in psychology?
What kind of fallacy?
Yeah, oh my goodness, it's a bias. It's a cognitive bias that is, it's on the tip of my tongue. But when you believe something coming into it, you'll believe it all the more, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it validates your presuppositions.
Yeah.
Anyway, someone will catch that later and text me. But yeah, that seems exactly what he's saying there.
Yep.
Man. So okay, so then that's a part of recognizing what we've earned. I mean, that we haven't earned it, but we've received it is part of the honesty with ourselves, that we don't deserve to lay claim to these things or all this stuff, right? Because we didn't do it.
Right.
It was given to us. And that all this gift, as we just said, changes the way that we perceive the world.
And I think too that there's at one point in, I think it was Psalms of Ascent, we were talking about humility, and we said humility is simply honesty, because it's the recognition of who we really are and how gracious Jesus has been to us. And humility isn't, it's viewing ourselves in reality in light of the fact that God is glorious, right? And so it's just simply humility is honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was sort of what we were getting at there,
Mm-hmm.
is that idea of, yep, when we really see ourselves, we haven't earned it, it's all gift, then humility is a byproduct of that.
Mm-hmm.
So then Paul makes some like pretty amazing statements in verse 3 of chapter 4. He says, I don't even judge myself.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're judging me, Corinthian church, but you shouldn't do that. You don't need to do that. And by the way, I don't even judge myself, which is okay. I didn't get the chance to go into that as much as I wanted to, but I think there's massive implications for us and especially in our culture right now. So I made the statement, the only blasphemy left is to deny self, because the self is the new God.
Yeah.
And so I think if for Paul to say, I don't judge myself, I don't validate myself, I'm not making determinations about my motives even. I think for us, we go, whoa, Paul, like, yeah, maybe don't judge everybody else, but certainly you could tell us why you're okay and why you should be innocent and why. And he goes, no, I don't. Was it verse 5? So
you're saying you're using like judge in a positive sense, or like affirm yourself.
He says, verse 4, for I am not aware of anything against myself, but I am not thereby acquitted.
Yeah.
So he's using this like judicial type of a framework to say, even though I have a clean conscience, it doesn't mean I have right standing with God because of my clean conscience.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, wow, there is so much there.
A lot. That's really good. But even though I don't think I did anything wrong today, right? I feel like I've been okay in this. I'm not innocent.
Yeah.
It's a recognition that that there's so much more going on. I think that's a super helpful way to look at this.
Yeah.
Because I think so many people, it's about like, oh, I didn't do it. I didn't do that. I mean, this is once again, kids. It wasn't me.
Right.
She did it. He did it, right. Whatever. I mean, that is so human nature. But to say, hey, I mean, I still may be wrong.
Yeah.
Is in a way.
Or things like, when we say something that hurts somebody and our response is, oh, well, I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
Right. And, I'm surprised you took that way, or I'm sorry that hurt your feelings. Right. And so all of those are ways that we often protect our conscience. And we go, well, what matters is my motives. And I can assure you that my motives are pure.
Yes.
And Paul's going, I'm not so sure.
No.
Even he's saying that about himself.
Yeah. That's a good observation.
So I think the layers there are just massive. And I think in a day and time where I think we elevate our internal monologue and our internal feelings to almost a place of deity, that this is a challenging word for us.
Yeah. Just because I'm not aware of any internal sin in me, or external sin, right? Or any sin at all, and I'm trying my best, doesn't mean that I haven't sinned.
Yeah.
And I think that's honesty, that's knowing himself, and what a breath of fresh air in our world that like would say, hey, I mean, I'm sorry for what I don't know I've done in this, even,
right. So with the risk of getting into deep and theologically challenging and sociologically challenging waters, like one of my questions was about some of the things that we've seen in our culture about gender and sexuality, and some of those internal narratives and wrestlings that we see going on in our cultural moment right now. For Paul to write, I may feel this way, but it may not be true. And it may not align with reality. I think is a challenging word for us to at least put as a blip on our radar to go, okay, I may need to rethink the way that I think about my internal monologue, or at least hold it maybe a little bit more open to scrutiny, rather than saying, because I feel this way, it is certainly true.
See, actually what you're getting at is what we talk about, that objective truth versus subjective truth, that that subjective questioning of ourselves is important, and that we need to do it, but we cannot hold that one over the objective truth.
Right.
Because what he's saying is, I may not see anything.
Yeah.
But objectively, there
might be something
even, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There may be, and I've got to be humble enough to recognize that what you're saying is like, I may feel, sexuality or identity one way.
Yeah. I mean, name your issue,
whatever
right?
that is. There's a humility to say, but objectively, there's something else going on, and my subject of my idea of myself doesn't dictate everything.
Mm-hmm. Just because I'm not aware of anything against myself does not thereby acquit me. Yeah. So, I think there's a lot there, obviously, but that was some of what was going on in the back of my mind. And I tried to think through, okay, what are ways I try to protect my own conscience? Because if one of the ways that we deceive ourselves is by protecting our conscience, what is our strategy for doing that? And for me, I saw 3 things that I sometimes do. And so I just tried to name them. Blame others.
Yeah.
Compare myself to others, believing or trying to make myself believe God's grading on a curve.
Yeah.
And then just simply deny. Like, nope, that's not as I thought about that, we have an amazing ability to convince ourselves of things that aren't true. And we would pass a polygraph. No, that really wasn't my fault. That was their fault. And I only did what I did because they did what they did. And if they wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have done what I did. And therefore my conscience is clean. Right.
Yeah. No,
and
exactly right.
It's this type of a thing. And then we protect ourselves and we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good one. That, man, that idea that we would pass a polygraph is actually true. That especially dealing with past events, that we remember them in a way that sometimes it's positive for us. We change our memories of the past so much so that we would pass a polygraph about what has happened back, and it's usually wrong. It's some level, not everything's wrong, but the details just do not add up.
Yeah,
is what studies have shown. And so eyewitness testimonies and things like that. And so especially when you're dealing with, this is what I did, I'm in the right. And I mean, I don't know about you, but this seems to be an issue that I run into so much with family issues, with historic issues, especially things that have happened relationally a long time ago that keeps getting brought up, but everybody brings it up a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Right. And no one's willing to say, I don't think I was wrong, but I'm not acquitted.
I'm not acquitted.
Yeah. No one's willing to say that. Everyone's like, no, this is how I remember it.
Right.
This is what it is. And they'll go to their grave saying that because they believe it.
Right. And I don't know if it's that we don't want to, or we're unable to ask the question, do I believe it went that way because that helps me or makes me look better? Or is self-deception, self-protection in this area of my life?
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah.
So, we blame, we compare, we deny. We already talked about that we believe we've earned what we've actually received. And then we got into this section where, so my wife says to me afterwards, I never read this section as sarcasm, but she said, I think you're right. I think it is, where Paul says, already you have all you want. Already you've become rich. Without us, you've become kings. And I sort of went like, hey, good for you. Bravo. And he says, I would that you did reign. I wish it were true, what you believe, so that we might share in the rule with you. So I think I pointed out that, and this obviously isn't original to me, that a lot of the commentaries would suggest they had this overrealized eschatological viewpoint that they had hooked onto, that just simply all that means is that they believe that all the good things that Jesus promises in the end, which we will receive in Christ in all of their fullness, the Corinthian church believed that they were already theirs. That's why that word already is such a key word in that text. So will we reign one day? Yeah, we will. I mean, in fact, like there's in a few weeks, we've got this, what I think is sort of a funny text coming up. It says this: do you not know that we are, this is chapter 6, verse 3.
6, okay.
Do you not know that we are to judge the angels? And I wanted to be like, no,
I didn't know that.
We didn't know that. In fact, could you go into that more?
I'd like another page on that, please. Just one more page. All right.
There's maybe like a number of rhetorical questions. Did you not know that the saints will judge the world? Did you not know you'll judge angels? I'm like, wow, there's a lot going on there.
There's a few things.
Anyway, so that's coming up in a few weeks. But
good, you'll answer that for us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess so.
Anyway, so that's where it's heading, right? But he's saying that's not the reality yet. And then what he does is he contrasts their perceived reality with his actuality, right? So he goes, okay, you think you're kings, great. You have all you need, wonderful. You're rich, awesome. And I think the subtext is sort of like, if that's true, why am I getting beat up? Why am I homeless? Why am I weak, quote unquote, as the world would sort of imagine it? Yeah. And his reality is not matching up with their theology.
Got it.
And so there's a number of contrasts he points out. But one of the things that I tried to sort of sift through, what's the lie that they're believing that could be attached to self-deception? So it's like trying to pull this thread all the way through. And I think it's this idea that we mistake worldly comfort for divine blessing.
Yes. Okay, that's a big issue. That's big.
I think it is. Yeah.
So okay, we did mistake our comfort.
Correct.
And especially in America, right? Our and in general America, but especially upper class, middle upper class America, when we've got multiple cars, really nice houses, all the things, right? That comfort can be mistaken for divine blessing.
Yeah, and yet there are times where God blesses materially.
Okay.
Because of or as a result of obedience, right?
Okay.
So I think the challenge with this idea is how do we know if God's blessing or if it's just we're experiencing worldly comfort? Two, how do we read this and not embrace like what we might consider to be a martyr syndrome where we go after pain and believing that that's the way that we should live, right? I mean, Paul says we're the scum of the earth, the refuse of all things. Like, is that prescriptive or descriptive, right?
Go be the scum.
Go be the scum of the earth, right? Get walked all over.
Yeah, that'll start a church right there.
Yeah, there was actually church. There is a church in Denver called Scum of the Earth.
Scum of the Earth Church.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, there is.
Is it working?
It did. There's a number of at one point seminary professors that went there, and but they were really reaching out to street kids and people that were experiencing homelessness. And,
wow. Yeah, I feel like
anyway,
that would be a hard sell here.
Yeah,
a little bit could be.
Yeah, I know. I think it was a hard sell for Paul too, right? Where I think he's going like, I'm really happy for you, but we aren't experiencing that.
Yeah.
Does that mean God's not blessing us?
Yeah.
And I think maybe people around the globe might ask the church in the West the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. For sure.
If the prosperity gospel is true, right, then why are there so many followers of Jesus around the world that just simply don't experience that?
Yeah. So prosperity gospel meaning like that because of our faith, because we believe the right things, God will bless us materially, with stuff.
Yep.
And that's one of those things that, I mean, if we really believe that, then what we're saying is that God is blessing America and God is not blessing other places.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you look around the world and you see the richest people. We're hearing about it right now in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
They're called oligarchs, right?
Yep.
And they're typically, seemingly, don't want to talk about all of them if you're listening, but not always the good guys.
Right.
Seeming like the exact opposite. Well, okay, this was a big question. In fact, we got a question about this.
Okay. Yeah.
About this idea, because this person just loved the idea. Can I say this? I think I can say this is Todd.
Sure.
Todd, thank you for your question. And so we want to get to this right now. I think these are questions, really. And he just says how this is where I think he could tell this was another area you would love to go deeper in.
Oh gosh,
this
yeah,
is one
yeah.
To really push into, because there's a lot in this passage. But so he'd love a deeper dive on this subject. For example, I hear from many how God has blessed them either financially or in other ways as a result of their faith. And so much of other scripture, especially in wisdom literature, extols the benefits and rewards of hard work versus failure and pitfalls of laziness. Okay. So
there are chapters on that in Proverbs. I think,
yeah.
Proverbs chapter 6, I think it is, would be a great example of laziness or sloth, as some translations might say, versus hard work. Right. So and Proverbs are pithy statements about the way the world generally works.
Absolutely.
Right. And so is it saying if you work hard, you will always be financially successful? No, I think we all know that there are people that have worked extremely hard and have never been financially successful as we might say it should look. And there are some people that have been really lazy and it's just seemed to work out really well for them.
Exactly.
But Proverbs are pithy statements about the way that the world generally works. And I would say yes and amen to that. You work hard, and typically what happens is you have enough.
Yeah. That's so funny. I got a text today from a former student who's now in seminary. He just quotes me Proverbs 19:4, which says, "Wealth attracts many friends, but even the closest friend of the poor person deserts them." And so he says is this justifying wealth? He says, so he's a seminary student. He's asked all these questions.
Yeah.
I said almost the same thing, that the Proverbs are not necessarily saying that something is good or bad. It's just saying that this is the way that the general kind of way that the life works.
Yeah.
And so it's not suggesting that we should, make our life about accumulating wealth, but it's just point out that sad truth that sometimes that's the way the world behaves.
It's true. Yeah.
And so that's a great point. So,
and I think to Todd's point, it's really hard to tell sometimes, right? Why?
Yeah.
Like, did this person, were they blessed by God because they made wise decisions, or is that just the way that the world works, right? So now I would say that God is behind that wisdom, right? And that we see this very clearly in the book of Proverbs. Is it his active blessing all the time, in a sense of like, he's going, Josh, great job. Yeah. And because you worked hard, I am going to personally reward you. Or is it baked into the design of the universe, right? I think, but either way, God's behind it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's getting at the, there's scripture all over this. And to his point, there's a lot of scripture about wealth.
Yeah.
I mean, they're about money issues of some sort, right? For sure. And but he's getting, how do we distinguish between those, the two? That's the big question. How do we know if it's a blessing that might comfort? At times it seems like there could be a blessing there.
Sure.
I mean, let's just face it. It's better than not.
Absolutely. Right? 100%.
I don't think we would wish poverty on anybody. But how do we know the difference? Maybe he says, maybe I need a specific example of the differences, and any similar comparison of He says, now he throws out common grace and prevenient grace.
Okay.
Is what he's getting at here. So what you were just saying about the way it's baked into the to the system, right? To the world.
Yep.
The way world works. That would be an example of common
grace.
Right?
Sure. Okay. So let me answer. I think it's easier to answer it on the negative side, meaning like, how would we know that we are simply just experiencing worldly comfort rather than divine blessing?
That's probably true. Yeah. Okay.
And what I would say to that is God will not actively bless something that goes against his commands, right?
Actively bless it. Okay.
So like when Paul starts to point out, here's the way that we do. When we are reviled, we bless, right? And this is simply, like, if you go back and read the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5 verses 3 through 12, you're going to see a lot of these, right? If you read the Sermon on the Mount, you're going to see a lot of these. And so if we, when reviled, if we don't bless, right? If we lash out and somehow that goes well for us, it's not because God blessed. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think so. For me, that's the easier way to put it. When persecuted, we endure. And so I think what Paul's saying is, no, like God's blessing allows us to continue to endure even when things are challenging. It doesn't prevent those things from happening every time, right? Or even when we slander, we entreat, or we encourage, right? So if we return a wrong for a wrong and it works out well for us, that's not God's blessing. And so I think that the negative side of the financial piece too, if we cut corners on our taxes and we're not honest, right? And we have more money because of it, it's not because God blessed. It's because we cut corners.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what he's saying, like to the Corinthian church. If you're experiencing being, he says, you've already become rich, you have all you want, and you've already become kings. I think he's tying this back into you are embracing worldly wisdom, and it happens to be working out for you in the short run. But the way of Jesus, while it may be harder in the short run, is actually better in the long run. Yes. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. And yet, so, I mean, you can have, because if you stop paying taxes, you'll have more money.
Correct.
In the short run.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually they'll catch up to you.
Yeah.
Right? Now, oh man, and yet it sometimes, and this seems like the book of Ecclesiastes. Is like a book that just gives it seems like a bunch of scenarios where that common logic, right, that we live by, that our society is organized by, that keeps us from not paying taxes, right?
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't true, generally speaking, that if you stop paying taxes, then you'd get in trouble, then people would just stop paying taxes, right? But sometimes the book of Ecclesiastes points out that there's these people that are they're terrible people that make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And live seemingly successful lives.
Right. Why do the wicked prosper? Right. Psalm 73, David's going, I'm scratching my head, God, because it sure seems like the people who are doing wrong are getting ahead.
Yeah.
And I think that, so I hope that helps. And what was so I think the negative is easier to prove than the positive, right?
Yeah.
The positive, as we walk with Jesus, and so that's the goal, right? We abide in him. And as we do that and experience God's goodness and grace and mercy, I think it's safe to assume that's God's blessing, right? So absolutely. Prevenient grace and common grace.
Yeah.
What was that? Will you read the question?
Yeah. He says, well, I mean, you got it. How do you distinguish between the two main, the two of which one is the blessing and which one's not? I mean, as much as I'd love to give Todd a real clear answer here,
it's tough.
I mean, it seems like the type of thing so back to that, this is one of those things between you and God in a sense, right? That, like, if you know that this was done the right way for the right reasons, all those things, and and it's done in the way of Jesus, right? That's the thing. Like, okay, I think of companies that do this in a positive sense. I mean, let's go Chick-fil-A or something like that, right? That stops.
It would be my pleasure to go Chick-fil-A.
You did that.
I'm hungry.
That was great. Well done. That they close down on Sundays, right? Yeah. And they're doing it for seemingly the right reason. Mm-hmm. It's not just a ploy to make more money, all those things, right? And yet they prosper. Yeah, because of that, and
because their chicken sandwiches are really good.
And their special sauce.
Listen, if Jack in the Box closes on Sunday, I don't know if it's helping them as much.
Okay, fine. But
but that's that combo, right? That's that combo that we're talking about.
Well, people that take care of their employees, they choose to bless others instead of hoarding wealth, which they can. Those kind of things. What is it Jesus says that this is getting at that idea? Use worldly wealth to bless others. Yeah. So that you may have friends.
Yeah, that's a parable of the shrewd manager.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. But but there's something about that when you see that happening, I think everybody says like, yes, right, that's the way it should be. And it's hard to set one kind of rule on it all. Yeah. But
yeah, I mean, I think that this whole, like, for example, I think this section is a challenging section to know exactly what's going on in Corinth at the time. And the way that it contrasts, we know it contrasts with what Paul's experiencing. So he does say here, you are held in honor, but we in disrepute, right? So he's saying that there's something that you're doing, believing, or saying that's causing the people in Corinth at large to look at you and go, right on. Yeah. Right on. And he's saying, but we're held in disrepute. Yeah. And if you've been with us over the last, few weeks in this letter, you know that for Paul, the cross is the ultimate event in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. He's saying, like, the shame of the cross is actually, or the foolishness of the cross is actually the wisdom of God. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't readily accepted in Corinth at the time. And so when Paul writes and he says to the church in Corinth, he says, where is it? If any of you thinks that he's wise in this age, mm-hmm. let him become a fool. Mm-hmm. I think what he's saying is you haven't gone all in on the cross and all in on the gospel, and you're getting the applause of the world because of it. Yeah. You are held in honor, but because we've gone all in on the gospel, we're held in disrepute, and it may be working out well for you, right? Where does he say? We are weak, but you're strong. Yeah. You are held in honor. We in disrepute. To the present hour, we're hungry. We thirst. We pour. I think what he's saying is, like, what you're experiencing is not God's blessing. It's actually, you have just acquiesced to the world. Yes. And you're experiencing worldly comfort.
And what he's getting at, though, is that what he's experiencing is the same kind of suffering that Jesus did. Right. And so you used a word that is not a common word about this. That discipleship is cruciform.
Oh yeah, right? Yeah.
That idea. Explain that idea of cruciform.
Yeah, like to be the way of the cross, right? The way of self-sacrificial love mm-hmm. for the sake of another, mm-hmm. giving yourself for the sake of another. Is it's cross formed.
Yeah. So that could be kind of an answer to Todd a little mm-hmm. bit, that if it's done sacrificially, right. And that's the hard thing about like business stuff necessarily, because very rarely are you sacrificing. Mm-hmm. I mean, usually you're trying to make money. Yeah. Okay. Now, not to say that's not wrong. Like, making money is not wrong in itself, right? Yeah. But there's something about that sacrificial attitude of what Paul's getting at here, that discipleship is being willing to sacrifice some of those things. Paul clearly did. He was hungry. They're well fed, right? Mm-hmm. That ability to say, to deny ourselves mm-hmm. is what you're getting at. That's what our discipleship needs to look like.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And I think that just sitting with that a little bit of, okay, how is my discipleship in a cruciform shape? In other words, am I dying for the sake of others?
Right.
For my community, for my family.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's move on to something better. I'm just kidding. That's it.
Yeah.
That was really, I'm joking.
And I think as far as like the idea of self-deception, gosh, maybe that ends justify the means type of mentality is something that can slip in for every single one of us. And that was one of the things that I tried to point out is that if I can sort of try to step into the Corinthians' shoes and listen to Paul, I think it could be that type of a statement that he's making. For you, all these things are good, but if for you the ends have justified the means, and you're actually not living the way.
Yeah. In other words, you did it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
So great. You've got wealth.
Right. You're held in honor.
You're
wonderful.
Great. It's just the way you got there. It was the wrong way. It killed the message. Right. That's it. Man, that the message and the messenger is so tied together.
Yeah.
That was Malcolm Muggeridge. I think said that the message is. Sorry, am I saying that right? The messenger is the message.
Yeah,
that's how he said it.
Yeah.
That if the message gets out there, but it's done in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right, Ooh. Man, or the person is living the wrong way. It just it can hurt the message.
Yeah. And we've all seen that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man, that's really good. Okay. There's more to this. Well, you got to listen to the whole sermon.
Yeah.
But we are up on time. And so Ryan, any last words, thoughts?
No, I think I think this is for me, it was a challenging message to write because I just found myself asking, all right, Lord, where do I not see reality about me? And, had some good conversations with people about maybe some areas of me that I don't see. And so that was part of my follow-up and application. It might be some of yours. I think this idea.
I'd rather not do that.
Yeah. Is that... Not yours, like, like just yours in general. The general y'all.
Yeah, not me.
I do think that the point about we are in Christ has to be the foundation of any sort of honest self-exploration. And so Tim Keller does some great work on this, on how the way that our conviction about the gospel allows us to be honest with ourselves in a way that nothing else does, because the core of who we are becomes unshakable. And so I had some of that in the background of my mind as I wrote that last point about our secure identity. But I really do think when Paul says, don't deceive yourself, and all things are yours, you are Christ's and Christ is God's, like that is not inconsequential. Like we can live in an honesty because we know we are in Christ. And apart from that, I don't know that that's a possibility.
Yeah.
At least not one that we would want to venture into, because the very foundation of our identity could get rocked if we found out something about ourselves that we wished weren't true.
Yeah. Oh man. And tying that all together, I hadn't seen this until you just said that Paul here's talking at the end there about how well off they are, and they've gone the wrong way to get out these great. They're well off, wonderful. Yep. These things that don't really matter in the end. And yet they had been given everything.
Yep.
Everything in the beginning.
Yep.
And it's just that comes just a different way. It's the way of Christ, the way of the cross.
Yeah.
In Christ on the cross. Oh man. Well, Ryan, what a great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. Oh man, Carolyn's got some comments here. Hello, Carolyn Schmidt. We were so into this, we didn't get to comments today.
I know.
But as always, we're so thankful for you, for your interaction with us, the questions you have. Thank you, Todd, for sending that question in. And we'd love to interact with any others that come in. This next week, we're continuing this series.
Yeah.
Continuing chapter 4. Get the rest of chapter 4.
Rest of chapter 4.
Most of chapter 4.
Yep.
Another good sized passage.
No, this one's just 14 to 21.
Good. Okay. Oh,
yeah.
You got that far. That's right.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, all right. I see that you've got a book up.
Okay, just really quick.
I think we have time for a book.
Really quick.
This is good.
Okay, this is a beach read.
Beach read.
Well, actually, not quite. All right.
Okay.
This is a great novel. It's called We Begin at the End, and it's by Chris Whitaker. And I'd read this on my vacation and absolutely loved it.
Really
loved it. So you may know that I think I recommended This Tender Land a little while back by William Kent Kruger, and I loved that story. It was like this adventure, sort of Tom Sawyer-esque, with like great character development and like good authorship. This one, it functions in a similar way. There's this I think she's a 13-year-old girl that's the protagonist. And it's just a great read. There's a little bit of swearing in it, but if you can handle that, I think you'd really enjoy the book. It's a novel. It's a great story. And I won't spoil it, but it does have some nice twists and turns. So
there you go.
And I think a really interesting message. So if you end up reading it, message me. I would love to talk to you about it.
Okay. Oh, interesting. All right. Well, there you go. He doesn't just read theology books, ladies and gentlemen. That's good. Good to know. Well, thank you all for being here. And thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Josh. It was a lot of fun.
Great conversation.
As usual.
We will we'll be back again, Lord willing, next week.
Same time, same place.
Yes, indeed. God bless everybody.
See you.